Okay, we are ready to go. Thank you for joining me. This is Ron Jones. I have been asked to give a talk for this year's annual ISRT conference. Very grateful for all that they do for our profession and our community. And so what I'll be going over today is going to be what I consider the elephant in the room, and that's rad tech burnout. This is a talk I've given across the country at a couple different conferences. I typically gear it towards administrators. Today's audience should be a mixture of just techs in general and maybe some students, maybe some administrators, but nevertheless, rad tech burnout is in the news constantly, or at least on the tips of our tongues. And so let's get started. Where's my mouse? There it is. So quick financial disclosure. I do own the Radiologic Technologist.com blog that I'll be quoting from. I do receive an honorarium for some seminars, but not this one. And I do receive some financial compensation for teaching radiology administration courses through MTMI. Non-relevant, relevant, non-financial, sometimes it feels non-relevant. Relevant non-financial relationships include I'm a non-salaried board member of the Pima Medical Institute Bachelor of Radiologic Technology program. That's actually my alma mater, and that's where I went to Xray school. My wife went to Xray school there. My stepdad went to Xray school there. We are steeped in Pima Medical Institute, but I digress. Who am I? If you don't know who I am, I'm just a guy who's been in medical for a long time, started in phlebotomy, went through X-ray, ultrasound, CT, MRI, worked my way up into management, and culminated with my doctorate in 2021. So why are we here? We're here to talk about burnout, and burnout itself. If you look on Google Scholar under the phrase burnout, there are 21,100 peer-reviewed articles. I'm not just talking about Cosmo or non-scientific magazines out there. I'm talking peer-reviewed articles. At the time I wrote this talk anyway, 21,000. Now pre-COVID, there was 13,800, and then once COVID hit, another 7,000 articles came out. So just in the past couple of years, we've increased quite a bit on burnout as a conversation, burnout as peer-reviewed articles, and it's definitely something we need to be discussing. So what's going on? Well, there's a lot of things going on in our environment. It's constantly changing. On the administrative side, we've all seen this "do more with less" mantra that's been going on for probably more than a decade. Bob quits, and what we hear is we can't replace him. We just got to all pitch together and keep going. And technologists are stretched thinner and thinner and thinner. And then with the COVID-19 event occurring, there became a big push for travelers, and people leaving the field gave birth to an increase in the amount of travelers. There's a lot more money being a traveler. You get to see the country. You get to change places a couple times a year. It's a big hot trend still today to be a traveler in radiology. And then you add to that this huge influx of the boomer population. I guess it's been about 5 years now since I did a study on what was going to happen to the healthcare system where I was working, and predicting our volumes, our patient volumes, in comparison to what was going on with the retiring baby boomer population. And at the time, it looked like approximately 40% increase was headed our way in patient volumes, because the boomers, being the largest generation, now being in the peak of retirement and needing more medical care than ever, they're going to swamp our healthcare system. And we have to add that to the fact that we don't have enough staff to begin with. So You got the do more with less crowd out there trying to squeeze every last dollar out of what's going on in the department. People leaving to be travelers, people bowing out because they don't want to have anything to do with COVID-19. You got the boomers hitting us harder than ever for care. And then this trend of multimodality, which I'll say started, I mean, it's been around a long time, but I'd say a good, 20 years ago, if you were a single modality technologist and you wanted to cross train into another modality, it was really hard. There was not a lot of, there certainly weren't any online programs to go learn CT or MRI. You could go back to school for ultrasound, which is something I did after Xray school. But we used to jump at any opportunity to cross train into another modality because in our eyes, from the technologist standpoint, it meant more money, it meant more excitement, more things you could do. It made you feel like you had more value to bring to the team. And unfortunately, what has happened over the years is that advanced skill set has been kind of expected. And I have many friends who are in the staffing business, headhunters, I affectionately call them, and they are constantly being asked by hospital administrators for nothing but multimodality technologists. They don't just ask for an ultrasound tech anymore. They want a sonographer who's licensed in both general and echo and vascular, which, back in the day, you were just one, maybe two, depending on the school you went to, but you certainly didn't expect all three. And now, because so many technologists have become multimodality technologists, it's now kind of becoming the new norm. In fact, I heard a conversation today. Someone was talking about the jobs they're applying for in one particular hospital in Utah. They will not hire an X-ray tech unless that X-ray tech can also do CT. And so this is kind of what's going on in our environment, is all these expectations that we be able to cover multimodalities, but not necessarily be fully staffed and be prepared for the onslaught of COVID and things like that require us to work longer hours and be all donned up in gear. And it's just a completely different workplace than it was 20 years ago. So burnout, the good old Webster's dictionary version, is a combination of emotional, mental, and physical exhaustion caused by a demanding job that reaches an unmanageable level. And so some places as we go through this talk that I encourage you to check out are to avail yourselves to other people in our profession that you can confide in, talk to, ask questions to, share experiences with. And there's a great group on Facebook, if you're a Facebook user, and not everybody is, and I get that, but there's a great group on Facebook called the Radiologic Technologist group, which is actually now around 9,000 or 10,000 members. And it's strictly for technologists. There are some nurses in there that are radiology nurses. But it's also for people interested in the field who want to ask questions so they can get the information direct from the source. But I encourage you, if you want to be a part of a group, there's people in there that you can post anonymously to ask how you would handle certain situations if you don't want everybody to know that it's you. And then, of course, my blog, the radiologictechnologist.com, there has over 200 articles talking about different things in our field. So one of the things I did a few years back was I went on to a Facebook group, actually two Facebook groups, and I posted a simple poll talking about burnout. What are some things that you've seen in the field of radiography that has led you to feel burned out, or that you think is a cause of burnout? And that's some screenshots of some conversations that people shared. Starting at the top left, somebody said they were getting burned out carrying the workload, and I said, well, what's going on? And they said, well, there's a employee that I work with that clocks in at one hospital and then leaves and goes work at another hospital, and then they can't be found. And you can see another technologist saying, are you serious? And I've actually seen that multiple times. Another person said, they have to do more work because other people clock in and hide, and it's easy to do in large hospitals. People taking 15-minute breaks and coming back and saying they're taking their lunch and then taking their afternoon 15 after lunch. So they actually have an hour taken. I mean, this is just a wall of complaints, really, but it illustrates all the frustrations that are building out just about across the board, and all the ways that people are taking out their frustrations on what's going on at their workplace. And unfortunately, a lot of times that gets inadvertently turned towards the other employees and puts more burden on the coworkers. So through that poll that I conducted, I identified 13 causes of rad tech burnout. Sorry, I'm trying to get comfortable here. The 13 causes are listed there on the screen. It includes inadequate personnel, which we've all seen, uncontrolled traffic of patients, just getting clobbered by the amount of patients coming through the door. It can be caused by an unhealthy lifestyle on behalf of the tech. Sometimes night shift, for example, you're really limited to your food choices and what you can eat. Is the cafeteria even open? Do you even have a cafeteria? Number 4, ambiguity within the job. You don't know what you're supposed to be doing, or you're being asked to do things that you didn't know you were supposed to be doing. 5 kind of ties into that. It's a lack of proper training or a lack of proper orientation to the job. 6 is an unhealthy work environment, and we'll get more into that. 7 is a personality traits or conflicts between personality traits within the department can be a cause. Number 8, inappropriate equipment. Number 9, ineffective leadership. Number 10, we're exposed to a lot of trauma cases depending on where you're located at, but we get exposed to trauma, and not every place has an adequate form of debriefing employees to deal with that trauma. Number 11 has to do with the ergonomics of the job. 12 is witnessing or working somewhere where profitability is driving the workflow. And then last, number 13 would be expanded work duties, being asked to do things that are above and beyond what you were trained to do, or what you expected to do, or what you saw in your job description when you were interviewed. So number 1, just to break down inadequate personnel, of course, there's the Office Space joke. Yeah, we're going to be short-staffed forever. So if you could just work yourself to death, that'd be great. The problem it creates is when you're understaffed, it burns you out, and it also compromises patient safety. So what are the solutions to these? And I'll try to give solutions to all 13. The solution to the inadequate personnel is make sure you know what your job duties are, and just be comfortable in your own skin saying, I'm concerned for my patient safety. At this rate, being down 3 technologists in our department, being asked to continue to see the same amount of patient volume that we did before we lost 3 technologists, I'm really getting concerned for my patient safety, and I'd like somebody to address this issue. You can also share the concern to management directly, or bring it up at a staff meeting. But you should know that it's your job to take your time with each patient to perform proper patient care and ultimately acquire a diagnostic image. So don't let that be compromised. The faster you work with less people, the more it's going to be expected. And you may have already seen that. Number 2 is unusually high patient volumes. I know it's a shoddy video, but the point is made. What starts out with something manageable can quickly become something that is no longer manageable. And so the problem that creates is mistakes start to be made. You start to get increased wait times. The staff becomes unhappy. They're not able to provide the level of care they want to provide. And then that leads to unsatisfied patients who will get a survey in their mailbox at some point and be more than happy to share their unsatisfying patient care on the survey. And so the solution is, use established standards to schedule workloads. There's all kinds of companies out there like Health Trust and Advisory Board that have gobs and gobs of standards that you can borrow from or copy or alter to establish a good solid workload schedule for your department based on all the different parameters that make up your department. Another helpful tip is just watch your physician schedules when you've got outlying clinics that you staff, or you're the technologist in an outlying clinic. Request a copy of the physician's vacation schedule prior to, say, spring break. I've seen oftentimes where places are fully staffed and then there's no volume. And in retrospect, it was realized, well, of course, the doctors all took off for spring break. So the week before spring break, they hammer all the orders that they're going to need and kind of exceed the patient volumes the week before the holiday. And then there's nothing going on the week of the holiday. So get those schedules ahead of time and plan appropriately. And then if you work someplace that double books, consider bringing that up for discussion at a meeting. Double booking just assures a problem because eventually two patients booked at the same time will show up at the same time, and then you're behind for the whole rest of the day. And the techs know this. So if you're at a place that double books, bring that up. And then I say remove all the non-essential duties. If you're a tech and you're working at a clinic and somebody hands you a disc and asks you to burn a disc, or if you're being asked to go get patients out of the lobby and put them in the change room and then do the exam and then take them back and do all that footwork, either you've got to be allowed the time to do all those things, or somebody else should be assigned those duties. Front desk staff can burn discs. Front desk staff can escort a patient from the lobby to the change room. Let's get those non-essential duties or time-consuming duties handed to the correct personnel so the technologists can do what they're paid to do there, and that's to get diagnostic images for the radiologists. Unhealthy rad tech lifestyles, there's the joke. I only had one slice of pizza, but it's the size of half the table. Unhealthy environments lead to unhappy employees. It also leads to higher injury rates, health issues, which lead to lower patient satisfaction scores because you're having a hard time getting around the department or breathing, or you're not feeling well. It makes you crabby. So some of the solutions are to allow the use of PTO if you're an administrator to recharge. Don't make them take PTO because volumes are slow. I saw that during COVID. Horrible methodology. Technologists earn that PTO to use when they need it, not when the hospital needs them to take time off. And techs, you should be using your PTO to better your work-life balance. When you feel burnout coming on, or you need a break, use that PTO and recharge yourself. Seek out better food options in your department. If the cafeteria doesn't offer anything but pizza and hamburgers, talk to the head of food and nutrition and see if they would consider a juice bar or a smoothie bar or keto options, whatever it is that's going to bring better food options to your department. And then administrators reward positive outcomes with gift cards to healthy options, gym memberships, healthy food, restaurant gift cards, things like that. Reward positive outcomes with things that help to make the staff healthy. And then always promote and encourage a work-life balance. Techs, I cannot emphasize that enough. It's really up to you to safeguard your work-life balance. You ultimately are in charge of your schedule, and so that's up to you to set those boundaries. Number 4 is unclear job roles. What happens in vagueness stays in vagueness, right? The problem it creates is it gives you a lack of control with your job boundaries. For example, I don't know how many times I've come into a day shift to find that a CT scanner or an X-ray room is down. And when you finally get a hold of the tech that was on the night before, they say, well, I'm not supposed to call biomed myself. I'm just supposed to report it at shift change, and then day shift takes care of it. That's what we have lead techs for, right? I don't get paid extra to do that stuff. We need to empower the people that work frontline to do the things necessary to keep things running. Don't hide behind these things like other duties as assigned that we see on these job descriptions. Let's be clear with the job roles and the duties right from the get-go. People need to know what they are to do on the job and given the resource to do it. So under solution there, I have, Captain Obvious says set clear expectations, not vagueness, but review that job description. If you're a technologist, review your job description multiple times throughout the year. Don't just, you may not even see it in your interview, but you should see it in the interview. But you need to know what is on your job description. And if that other duties as assigned is on there, ask what that means. Ask your administrator, what could be, give me some examples of what could be included in this other duties. Because if you don't start that conversation, that little phrase is going to be the umbrella to signify that they can ask you to do anything. So that's an elephant in the room. Get it out in the open. Let's talk about it. What other duties could I be assigned? And then I like to see more of the see one, do one, teach one, right? Don't just show somebody by pointing down the hall where they need to go. If they get an order to go to the OR for post-surgery KB or something, or a film, don't just point down the hall and say, head down there, take a left, go up the elevator, third door on the right, get an X-ray and come back down. Go with them, show them how it's done, show them how to place that cassette in that slot under the bed up there. See it, do it, teach it. Consider rotating the lead tech position so you get fresh perspectives of what's going on. Somebody that's been in a job role for a very long time is going to start to develop tunnel vision, and things that they think everybody should know, they don't. They just think everybody knows it because that person has been in their position for so long that they've told it enough times in the past, they think everybody knows it. Well, constant turnover and adding new positions means everybody needs to be made aware of what's going on. And sometimes that doesn't get passed across when you have the same person in the same role for long periods of time. So consider rotating people around. And then do you have a safe place at work for techs to make suggestions or comments? Do you have an anonymous suggestion box? Techs, if you don't have one at your workplace, consider requesting it. You need some type of an outlet to make comments and suggestions top of mind. That means when you think about it, you need the ability to go drop that in the box. Very helpful. Number 5, lack of proper training. The problem it causes is unconfident techs, poor diagnostic quality images. It can put the patient and the employee at a safety risk. So, it's not that hard to give proper training. There, you need to have an established competency list. Everybody should understand what's expected and given an opportunity to be retrained if needed. I've seen techs that are on the job 25, 30 years. You think they still remember everything from 15 years ago? Everybody needs a little bit of retraining every now and then. So when it comes to proper training, somewhere in your protocol should be the ability to get retraining simply by asking for it if necessary. And if you use an established onboarding protocol like the Donna Wright model, it'll cover all the things you should go through, give you a follow-up system. So people that have been in the role a long time will be asked at some step along the way how they feel about everything. Do they need retraining on anything? And then techs, if you get to that point, then when all of a sudden you're asked to go up to the OR to shoot a can't remember what it's called, instrument count. I don't think that's what it's called, but when you go up to do an image to see if anything was left inside, maybe you haven't done that in a while. And so you need to point that out to your leaders or your coworkers. Say, look, I haven't been that part of the hospital in forever, or I haven't done, I haven't seen those new beds. I've heard they've got new beds up there with special, you got to put a plate in the special way, whatever. Don't be afraid to ask to train up if you don't feel up to speed on a particular procedure. And there's our trauma room, of course, the unhealthy work environment. If you've done any rotation through trauma centers, that is not an exaggeration. The joke on the meme there is, did anyone see my left marker? But the problem, these hospital work environments can present is it means big time or frequent nosocomial infections for the techs. There's high possibilities for needle sticks, high stress and anxiety. So, some of the solutions to that include taking the timeouts that are required during procedures, audible breaks, call it out, and then keep everything clean. Don't just rely on housekeeping to come clean up messes. If you see something and you've got some downtime, go ahead and clean that up. And then that way, when housekeeping comes through at the end of the day, they're just doing spot checks. And let's all, we should all be pitching in to keep everything as clean as possible. And then I encourage you to slow down and take the time necessary to do an adequate exam. And I encourage the docs to quit pushing so hard. I've seen a lot of scenarios where in surgeries or in IR where the physicians are getting kind of snappy, kind of short-tempered, kind of hurry up, get it over here, turn it over. I want you to waggle. I want you to record that. Hand me that instrument, whatever. We need to make sure that everybody respects the time that is needed to get a proper exam and properly stock all the necessary PPE. We don't want to go without something because we didn't have it in the room. We also don't want to hold up the exam because we had to run and get it when we were out. Understand your situational awareness. That just means what's going on around you. If you're in a busy trauma room or an OR, especially in sterile environments, you got to pay attention to where your equipment is and where your elbows are and what's touching the table. And you don't want to be the one that gets stuck or labeled as the person who broke the sterile field during a surgery. So watch your situational awareness. And finally, if you're ill, if you don't feel well, take time off and use your PTO. There is no award for the least work days missed. I know, I guess I won't call it generational because I'm sure it's across the board, but I was guilty back in the day of being one of the employees who prided myself on never missing a day and always being there no matter what. And in retrospect, that was silly of me to do. I should have taken the time off that I needed to recuperate. I was exposing other people of potential flus or whatever it was that I might have had. My productivity was definitely down because I wasn't feeling 100%. For all those reasons, when you don't feel well, just take time off and use your PTO. That's what it's there for. Don't be part of the unhealthy environment. Personality traits. Some people say, well, there's nothing you can do about that. If you work with a type A, they're just going to be high strung and they're going to just be go, go, go. And I'm just not a type A. I'm more reserved. I'm more methodical. I think things through. There are personality surveys out there. Some departments give them out, some don't. There's the DISC personality survey, for example. And if you can give those out, or if you take those yourself as an employee, it helps to identify different attributes of your personality. And if you do take it as a group, then you can kind of see how you will work well and not so well in different aspects or different scenarios with those on your team. And you can even take that to a place where you can start to complement each other in the different scenarios, because then you know how each other work most efficiently. But the solution to this different personality traits is just to encourage compromise among everyone, alternate exams, talk it out with your coworker, maybe discuss the appropriate workflow for the department in your staff meetings, and then be keen to ask for additional training or offer additional training if you're an admin or a lead tech to those that are showing up as underperformers. There's reports that shows how many exams everybody does. And if you see somebody underperforming, it's time to step in and say, hey, what's going on? Do you need some retraining? Is this just something you're not comfortable with? And that could go back to number 5, which was the whole onboarding scenario, not being properly onboarded. Number 8, inappropriate equipment. We've all seen this. We've all got that one old room that's held together with duct tape. I had an old IR room that way at one point, and I jokingly mentioned that in a administrative morning huddle, and my superior was not happy that I mentioned that the equipment had literal duct tape on it, but a spade is a spade. I thought it was hilarious. Faulty equipment breaks down, it leads to unhappy patients, unhappy employees, because we all know that a down machine means you can't get any work done. That may mean, in some situations, it means the techs are sent home and you lose hours and money. Other situations, you may still be allowed to sit there and wait for it to come back up, but now you're behind and you've got a work list backing up on you, which makes you uncomfortable and agitated. And you know that the patients are out there grumbling in the lobby because now they're waiting longer. So, what's the solution to the inappropriate equipment? The first one's geared towards administrators. Replace the outdated equipment. Of course, that's easier said than done. I get it, but it should be on your radar. Plan ahead for replacements adequately. Don't wait till it's breaking to replace it, but also allow the techs to make service calls directly and not just report it up the chain. Techs, be proactive. If your equipment's starting to have issues, make sure you report it immediately to whomever you're allowed to report it to, and then follow up. Don't just turn in the ticket and say, well, I told them, I said, that's my job. I told them what was wrong. If they don't fix it, that's not my fault. Follow up on it. Ask them where's this at? I reported this 2 weeks ago, 3 weeks ago, 3 months ago. Where are we at with this? And help be a part of the solution that gets this equipment back up and running or running efficiently. And then number 9, effective leadership. Again, office space. So what would you say you do here? Love that scene. Those guys are hilarious. The problem with ineffective leadership is that techs feel like that management doesn't have their backs. If you work in a corrupt department culture, you know that it's debilitating and it's very hard to fix. It takes years and years to turn around a bad department culture. So what can you do? Well, maybe reach out and see what other facilities are doing. If you're in a facility and you're switching electronic healthcare record systems and it's causing some issues, maybe contact some of your friends in the field and ask what they did when they switched to EHRs, or what are some ways that they handled it. Maybe make some suggestions up the chain on maybe, hey, I talked to a guy that I know that works in another system. When they did this, they had 3 super users from the EHR company per department on hand, where they had a 24-hour hotline we could call. Be a part of the solution as best you can. Consult your peers on how to handle situations in these groups where other techs are hanging out and they're communicating about different things that are happening and finding out what other people do in those situations. Or request a forum right there at your job to discuss concerns. Maybe a monthly forum where you can go and bring up concerns and have somebody listening and taking notes and see if you can follow up that way. Number 10 on burnouts are trauma cases without debriefing. The Simpsons meme there, the coffee mug is the terrible coping mechanism. And Lisa there is holding the little coffee mug that says my fragile mental health. But this really trauma cases that we see in healthcare can be life altering. I mean, I still remember my first year as an Xray tech being at a level 1 trauma hospital in Phoenix, Arizona, and I was told to go down with my portable and wait to do some chest X-rays on 2 little girls that came in who had drowned. And I got down there and they were both laying on their gurneys and they were not covered and they were ashen gray. And it's something I'll never forget. I ended up not even doing X-rays on them. It was never even ordered. I just had to be on standby. But there was no debriefing. There was no counsel. There was no ability to talk to anyone about what I just saw and how do I process what I have 6 daughters. I had a hard time dealing with that. There was no regulation, self-regulation, company regulation, nothing to help deal with these traumas. And that's one of thousands that occur across the country on a daily basis. So, rad techs see horrific traumas, and internalizing it's very common. And this is not something that's typically taught in the Xray schools either. We don't talk about how to deal with the traumas that we see, the domestic violence, the violence on children, all the things that we'll come across. The county coroner bringing us bodies to image so they can try to determine the cause of death. So, facilities should offer counseling services to staff. If you don't have where you're at, I would gently request that or ask for that to the HR department or your boss. Um, the group emails that was for administrators, to remind your staff if they need to talk to come, please come up to the office and let's have a session, or offer to get the facility counselor if you have one. Encourage staff to use their PTO for R&R if they, if you had a big bad trauma come through, or the death of a child or something that was just really traumatic, and you need to take time off, take it. Or if it's allowed, and if it helps, form your own debriefing group to talk things out, and see if you've got a certified counselor there in your facility that can join your groups. There's a lot of things that can be done to help debrief after these trauma cases, and I don't feel like there's enough emphasis given on that stuff. So there's another burnout. Number 11, ergonomics. The joke with Homer there is that, I think naturally we slouch. Naturally, we don't put our feet where they should be on the floor. Maybe our monitors are at the correct level to reduce eye strain. Maybe they're not. But bad ergonomics will definitely shorten your work lifespan. It'll lead to irritability, pain. It'll slow you down during the exam. Ask any sonographer about wrist pain or shoulder pain or elbow pain or back pain. You really have to have top of mind on ergonomics in every modality. What are some of the solutions? I know it seems simple, but really every technologist should spend 5 to 10 minutes pre-shift stretching out all your different arms, all your limbs that you're going to be using to boost patients, pull patients down the table, help them up from their wheelchairs, move them from gurney to table. Administrators or even techs, grab some ergonomic posters and post them on the backs of the doors to remind you of the different stretches you can do on a daily basis. Ask your admin to spend a few dollars on some ergonomic chairs. Get some floor mats that are softer to stand on at your control areas where you're standing at the computer all day. Anything and everything that helps go that extra mile for ergonomics is worth it. And typically your patient safety departments will back that up, because they have studies that show a reduction in employee health claims, workman's comps claims. The more ergonomic a department is, the less claims they get. You can have proper lifting technique classes. You can do the videos. You can make sure everybody sees them, definitely during orientation, but perhaps annually. And then don't look past the Hoyer lifts. I like to see one in every area, every modality if possible, anywhere there's heavy lifting. And again, your patient safety department will oftentimes, or employee health department will oftentimes get behind helping you purchase those, because they're not cheap, but they're worth their weight in gold when they're helping you lift that 500-pound patient up and putting them on a table. So go after those Hoyer lifts if you don't have them. Number 12, profitability driving the workflow. We don't ever see that, right? Lunch break, bathroom break, ain't nobody got time for that. The problem it creates is just pure disaster. So some of the solutions, if you're a tech, ask to be allowed to give your input on the scheduling. If you're an administrator, get the tech input on the scheduling. Ask them, what do you think? If I didn't know anything about MRI and I'm trying to come up with a good MRI schedule, I'm not just going to say, okay, I think we can do 5 every 15 minutes. Let's go. I'm going to call some MRI techs into the room. I'm going to say, what's your most common, your top 5 most common studies? Then how long does it take to complete those? And then come up with a plan to give an adequate amount of time to get those done. So get tech input on the scheduling, and then reward a busy day. That's always appreciated. Set realistic volume goals on your goals for your upper management. They're going to be asking you to hit certain goals on your achievements. Make sure they're realistic. Don't be afraid to push back on those senior administrators, because you and your subject matter experts, which is your technologists who work it every day, day in and day out, you guys know what realistic volume goals are, not an MBA sitting in an office 3 floors away. And then, of course, we all know happy techs make happy customers. And at the end of the day, reimbursement's tied to what? Patient satisfaction. So if you don't have happy techs, you're not going to have happy customers. And you're driving your workflow with profitability. It just went right out the window because your techs aren't happy. Last but not least, expanded work duties. Multitasking, man, he can poorly complete any task within reach. Of course, the problems it creates is it compromises your patient care. You can't do everything, and nobody should be expected to do everything. And eventually, that tech's going to burn out. So what are some of the solutions? On the administrative side, just be mindful of what a tech is trained to do in school. Respect the tempo of what it takes to properly complete an exam and pay attention to their patient, and not push and prod and say, you got to go faster, you got to get more exams done. And respect their personal time. If they need time off, let them have the time off. Be hesitant to ask them to step outside the boundaries. Like I worked at a hospital once where the technologists were asked to input billing codes if they weren't on the order, or if the order came across and it just said chest pain. That was not an acceptable diagnosis. And so the techs had to talk to the patient, find out what was going on, and try and figure out what the billing or coding code was and assign it to that. That is absolutely not the job of a rad tech. That's an expanded work duty that not only is taking that rad tech out of their comfort zone and their level of expertise, but it's probably going to lead to disaster, because if they do it wrong, now nobody got paid for the time spent performing that exam. Let the people trained in billing and coding do the billing and coding. And then a simple reminder that multimodality techs must have enough volume in each modality to stay confident and competent. And you techs know, I ran out and was Xray, CT, and ultrasound very quickly, and I covered the night shift and did all 3. And if I had stayed at that for more than 10 years, my concern would have started becoming, am I adequate in all the different types of ultrasound imaging? Because I spend most of my shift doing X-rays and CTs. So make sure, if you're a multimodality tech, that you're staying competent in all that you do in each modality. And maybe that could be just as simple as reviewing exams during your downtime of the ones you don't get much of, or watching YouTube videos of them being completed, or whatever it takes to keep everything you do kind of top of mind. So if you get an order for something you haven't seen in a while, it's not that big of a stretch to go do it. And then offer additional compensation for additional duties. I know that's a stretch. Administration doesn't like to do that, but there are examples of it. I mean, that's really what shift differential is, right? You're being asked to go above and beyond working the normal day shift and come in on a second shift or a night shift. So you're given a shift differential or extra pay to do that. When I worked at Flagstaff, NIH down there, we had CT recons done by 3DR, a company that does them. That's all they do. I think they're about $75 per exam or something back then. And I could send a CT tech home, or they could be at home with a laptop that had the software on it. And in an hour, they can get roughly 2 CT recons done. And it was actually cheaper for me to pay that CT tech time and a half to do recons on their days off than it was to pay 3DR. Well, it was just a form of extra payment for the tech. They didn't have to do it. It wasn't a requirement, but it was an additional compensation for something they were doing outside their normal duties. So if you're looking at expanded work duties and there is no additional compensation of any form for them, that is going to eventually lead to burnout. So let's just quickly here in the next 15 minutes or so, just move through burnout itself. There's 5 stages of burnout. There's the honeymoon phase, where you've got high job satisfaction. You're excited, you just started, you're thinking about money. You're excited to no longer be a starving student, and now you have a job and you're making good money and everything's great. And that's kind of a stage one. And then stage two is where you start to settle into your routine. Your optimism isn't quite so strong. You're starting to see some common stress, some things that maybe you'd like to fix, but you don't know how. And then you move into step three. Well, and the meme there is that, when you ask a patient to hold still and they're just all over the place. But stage three of burnout is when that stress becomes chronic. And that's Jack running. It says me leaving work at the end of a rough shift. And that's where he's got all the natives chasing after him. But that chronic stress is where you start to get a marked change in your stress levels. You get more intense symptoms. It's starting to be kind of top of mind about how much, I'm really getting tired of doing this. I'm really not happy about the way that always works out. Maybe it's a certain employee. Maybe it's the equipment that you're working with. But it's starting to be a constant irritation. At step four, you're at burnout. The symptoms are becoming critical. You're finding it increasingly difficult to cope. You may be starting to say, I don't even want to go to work today. I don't like working there. I don't want to go there. And then that meme has the guy picking up the huge boulder, and it says, Xray tech helping the patient, and the person off to the side is labeled nurse. We feel that way sometimes, like we're doing all the work. And then stage five, there, habitual burnout, significant ongoing problems, danger, rad tech on duty. Those are the 5 stages of burnout. The top reasons behind it, these are just top 4 according to the Blind 2020 State of Burnout Survey. The biggest was unmanageable workload. It was you're just constantly getting clobbered. There's no break. You're missing lunch. You're staying late. You're being asked to go faster. You're being double booked. Second highest is insufficient rewards. Look, we're all paid to do a certain job, and we should be expected to do that job. But oftentimes we go above and beyond, and we don't necessarily see anything for that. And it's easy to say, be thankful that you have a job in this economy, or some other kind of platitude. But in reality, if your extra work is making the company more money because you're getting more exams done or something like that, why shouldn't there be some type of reward for helping the company to do more? Otherwise, what's the point? Just do your job, work your 8 to 5 and go home. So that is insufficient rewards is a very common verbalized burnout source. After that comes lack of support from leadership. You ask for things. I'm out of PPE, my machine's not working. That nurse in the ER is always putting in the wrong orders, and I have to fix them. You're always going to your leader, and you're not getting the support that you think should be there. And so that comes in at number 3. And then ultimately number 4 there is just a lack of burnout recognition from administration. They're just not seeing, or maybe just not acknowledging, that you are working your buns off, and that you're understaffed and you're doing the best you can, but you still maybe aren't quite able to even keep up. And there's just no light at the end of the tunnel. And so you can ask yourself, do I have these symptoms? Physical and mental exhaustion. Are you getting sick a lot because your immunity is lowered, or you're getting sick more often? Are you getting headaches a lot more frequently, back pains and sore muscles from boosting and moving your patients all the time? Is there a change in your appetite or sleep habits? Are you getting less and less sleep? Feeling impending dread about going to work? And I've seen the next one, cynicism, anger, and irritability. I've seen techs, man, that just, they've had it, they still come to work, but they're just so cynical. Well, that doesn't surprise me that doctor didn't know how to order that. He does that all the time. I'm constantly having to fix his orders. Feeling helpless, feeling trapped, feeling defeated. And then procrastination, or taking longer to get things done, starting to slow down. Those are symptoms of burnout. What are some of the antidotes? These are some critical to success or initiatives to help the well-being of the staff or yourself. The leader of the pack there, so to speak, is just having a people-centric culture. It's not about the almighty dollar. It's not about breaking new records. It's not about beating the competitors. It's about making a place to work that people want to work at so that they can do their jobs well and be happy about the way they're doing their jobs, which ends up in providing excellent patient care. And then also creating a safe and open environment in which to do that, a place to work where you feel safe and able to speak and put suggestions in a suggestion box or speak your mind at a meeting. And then realistic work expectations. We talked about that. Put it in writing, put it in the job description. Don't hide behind these other duties as assigned type nonsense. Have a work-life flexibility built into the policy. Some schools, for example, students are not allowed to do clinical hours more than a certain number in a day. You don't ever hear that on the job site, right? They'll let you work yourself to death. Maybe it's time to start putting maximum hours worked in a day in those work-life policies. And then antidotes, direct manager involvement. Let's see some more management being involved in, they used to call it rounding. Make sure they're rounding the floor and keeping their finger on the pulse. I personally prefer managers who are on the floor doing exams. Plus, as a technologist myself, I would rather keep my skills up by doing an occasional ultrasound or X-ray, as opposed to going to meetings all day and being in my office working on reports. So that goes a long way in well-being initiatives, is having management that works the front line. And then making sure you have a mental health benefits, or as the employee, making sure you have mental health benefits available to you. Ask your HR what those are. Oftentimes you're allowed so many counseling sessions a year. You're offered legal counsel for legal issues you may be facing. Ask your HR what your mental health benefits are that come with the job. So, often we hear self-care methods, take care of yourself. But these are just some examples of what self-care can be. Everybody's different. At the very top, asking for help. Don't ever be afraid to ask for help. If you need lifting help, ask for it. If you don't remember how to do a study, ask somebody. If you think something's going on with the patient, ask for assistance. And then if you need time off, take time off. Spend time with your family or by yourself, whatever you need to do to get your head clear, to reset. Put yourself first. Always ask for what you need. If you have something coming up and you need to take 3 days off, ask for those 3 days off. Put in that requisition. There may be deadlines on when you have to do it, and you want to follow those to the best you can, but you have to ask for what you need. Your administrators aren't going to come along and say, what do you need? Or at least most don't come along and ask what you need. You have to ask for what you need. And make sure you're setting your boundaries as well. If you're hired for a day shift and you are getting calls saying, can you come in on the weekend? Can you come in on the night shift? Set those boundaries and hold steady to what's best for you. Stay at home when you're sick. Don't try to be the hero and come in and work, even though your department's short staffed and you want to be that team player that comes in and helps. You're not helping if you're sick. You're risking everybody else getting sick. You're actually not performing as good as you could be because you don't feel well. Learn how to say no to those extra shifts. Learn how to say no to somebody asking you to come in even if you don't feel well. Learn how to say no when it's appropriate, and forgive yourself when you do something that maybe you shouldn't have done. Maybe you didn't have a good exam. Maybe you missed something. Maybe you forgot a certain image in your protocol. Don't be so hard on yourself. Everybody makes mistakes. Forgive yourself, take a step back, reassess, see what's going on. Everybody makes mistakes. So ultimately, you're going to have to ask yourself, when is it a time to quit? This is one of my final slides, but signs that it's time to quit your job, starting at the top left. If you just are dreading going to work every day, it kind of reminds me of the old redneck jokes. Here's your sign. If you're dreading going to work every day, here's your sign. Maybe it's time to find another job. You're procrastinating more than you're actually doing work. That might be a sign of if you think, well, I'm not being paid enough to do what they're asking me to do. So in turn, I'm going to slow down and do less work so that I'm actually getting paid appropriately for what I do. That's actually not a healthy mindset. That is you trying to get back at the employer because you don't think you're being treated fairly, which means you're not in the right work environment, and you should probably consider finding someplace else that values your time and your skills and pays you appropriately. The next one, taking a toll on your health. If you actually feel ill going into work, or you get butterflies in your stomach, maybe you work with a really toxic person and you've tried your best to work it out, and you've gone to administration and there's nothing being done about it, and it just makes you physically ill to know you have to go work with. And I've seen that, and I've been in that situation. It's time to consider finding another job. Bottom left, if you're constantly complaining about your job, you're venting all the time, so they say, if you find yourself complaining all the time, maybe it's time to find another job. Or here, if there's no room for advancement, I've come across that. I worked at a place early on in my career where I was an X-ray tech, but I was also trained and licensed in CT. And I asked the radiology director at that time if I could apply for an open CT position. And they said, nope, I've got you on Thursday, Friday, Saturday nights in X-ray, and that's a hard to fill spot. So I'm going to keep you there for a while. And then maybe in 3 to 5 years, we'll talk about advancement. And I literally took that opportunity to write a letter of concern to that director about my concern that I was being given no room for advancement. They didn't think I would do anything about it, and I quit. And I went somewhere else and got a job as a CT tech. So if you don't have any room for advancement where you're at, and if that's important to you, then that might be a sign. If you're a tech and you're an X-ray and you love X-ray and you don't ever want to do anything but X-ray, hey, stick it out. It's a non-issue if you don't have cross-training opportunities. And then finally, if you can't speak up at your job, how many of you have ever had that? You went to speak up about something and somebody talked over you. Somebody shut you down with their words, or they just weren't allowing you, or for whatever reason. That's not a good sign. You should be allowed to speak up. Now, if you're just blurting out when it's not your turn, that's something else. But if you genuinely are trying to bring up a concern and your boss or a coworker or somebody is speaking on top of you or over speaking you and not allowing you to say your fair share of what's going on with the concerns, that might be another sign that it's time to go somewhere else where they respect you and allow you to speak. So in conclusion, just a couple of mantras there. You can't really be present for the people in your life if you aren't taking care of yourself, right? And then one of my favorites, you're not required to set yourself on fire to keep other people warm. So just keep in mind, burnout is a real deal and you actually control a lot of it. And if you find that you can't, maybe that's a sign that you need to work somewhere else. But there are the references that I used for this talk. And I appreciate you allowing me to come and talk. If you'd like to connect, there's all the places that I hang out everywhere. I'm happy to engage. LinkedIn, Facebook. I'm on some more than others, but I'm out there and happy to talk to you about issues at your place of work or whatever it might be. Happy to help any way I can. So I'm Ron Jones. This was my talk on burnout, and thank you for your time.